Welcome to the podcast, Laura Murren.
Thank you so much, Matt.
It's been, I wonder how many years it's been since we had like a live dialogue.
Well, we're getting up there. So it's probably got to be almost 20 years. We're just shy of 20 years. So we're about 2 years away from that.
Yeah, I think it's probably about 15, maybe.
Yeah, because we hung out in college one time. So
yeah, I came to see you at what it was, Auburn, right?
that's right. But there was a time after that.
Yeah. In Athens, I think we hung out at least once.
Yeah, that was
too.
a crazy time.
Yeah.
But it was really nice to see you in Auburn that time. We went to that haunted house. I was just talking about that haunted house. That was the scariest haunted house I've ever been in.
That
so
was
scary.
Kind of an intense one. Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of, I want to go to a haunted house this month sometime as well.
Yeah, I bet there's some good ones out there.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, it's been like 15 years, and the way I like to start these conversations is to ask the person about their childhood a little bit, if you'd be willing to go into some of that.
Sure.
And so I guess I'm curious, like when you were really, really young, did you have any sense of spirituality?
By sense, do you mean did I go to church?
We don't even have to talk about it in the context of religion per se, but like when you were a kid, did you have any sense of like the sacred or the mysterious?
I remember being a child that would pray for everybody every night. I would just pray to keep everybody safe.
That's sweet.
Yeah, I would try not to leave anybody out. And so then I would also, all my stuffed animals, like I had to have every stuffed animal on my bed, nobody being left out, no man left behind. And so I remember that. I also remember, this was, I guess, well, whatever. I was a sensitive child. I remember having funerals for like bees that we would find, that's how you know probably that you really care about and notice death and things like that, and think about where things are going. Because you feel pain when you see something dying or dead or whatever, and you want to make sure it's safe.
So you had a lot of sensitivity and a lot of empathy for the people and the other living beings in your environment.
I do, and it's taken me a long time to figure out how to channel the empathy that I am. Like 10 years ago, I went out to Arizona to a rehabilitation center for multiple reasons. And one of the counselors, I had mentioned something to her because I had my first meeting, and she's like, well, what'd you think? And I said, I think that none of them wanted me here. And she said, well, how did you know that? I was like, I can just kind of just felt it. She's like, well, you're right. And you're an empath. And I was like, what is that? And she said, you're an empath. It means that you feel other people's feelings. And I knew exactly that right away that was right. That was right on the head. But I thought to myself, I don't know what to do with that. But when she gave me that knowledge, it's taken years for me to start to understand, like, I feel an emotion, but it's not mine, it's yours. And if I can channel that and really hone it and like use it, I can really help people. But if I get confused and I think it's my own emotion, then I can't help because I think it's mine. So
that's powerful. Yeah, well, before we drift away from childhood, I guess, did you grow up going to church with your family?
No, my dad doesn't believe in God, and my mom, they both hated the church. They were raised Catholic, and my dad just flat out said he just doesn't believe in it. My mom does, and she says that she's sensitive to spirits and she can see ghosts and stuff like that. But they didn't like the organized religion, so they never took us. So everything that I have is unique because has come from my experiences and my decisions.
Mhm,
So,
mhm, mhm. Yeah. Okay,
so I'm
cool.
ignorant also. You should know that. But I'm not, it's not like it would be the first time I heard anything, but
Sure, 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 sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I grew up going to church, but I didn't really have like a super intimate relationship with it personally when I was young. I mean, I do remember praying a lot, like by myself at night, and wondering about what God might be or something. And I always was kind of just baffled about my own existence. That was like the root,
yeah.
I think, of the root type of spiritual experience that I always had, even when I was young, is just kind of like looking at myself in the mirror and being like, how does anything exist? This is so weird.
You were born for science.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, well, I know that when we were in high school, we had a lot of classes together, and I just remember like talking to you a lot about a bunch of different stuff. I wish I could remember vividly like all the things we talked about.
Yeah, I
Um,
was thinking that, but that's not what I remember. I don't
r-
remember what we talked about. I remember the effect it had on me. You know,
yeah, yeah, me
I remember
too.
the connection that I had to you, not necessarily the very important ingenious things that we were talking about, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
But it was more just us, like that connection. I can remember your eyes and your face and our handshakes and like just stuff. So
yeah,
it
yeah,
was
no, yeah,
definitely a
me
deep
too.
connection.
Definitely a deep connection. Yeah. And I think, when I look back at like when I was an adult, when I was in high school, I think it was like you and Smith that I would have these really authentic, deep conversations with. And I do remember one thing that you said, and maybe I even misremember it, but it seems like at one point you kind of playfully said that both of us were like philosophers. And it's funny because at the time I didn't even really know what philosophy was. Like I had a vague sense of it and it seemed kind of true what you were saying. But I look back now and I'm like, I think our dialogues maybe like planted some seeds for me to get into that sort of thing,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I still believe that. So
Yeah. Yeah, 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 for sure. Well, another thing I'm interested in, because you've been in, well, when do you remember first like drifting toward art and creative expression?
um I've been writing stories since I was a child. And so I was not really somebody who I always wrote stories and I kept a journal. In fact, I still have them because I would just write about like what was going on in the house and stuff like that. Painting, I was also drawing at a young age, and I still have. By the time I was a teenager, I was drawing a lot. I'm sorry, my cat is,
It's all good.
she's really noisy. Um, I was drawing a lot, but I didn't paint until I was in college. That was the first time I ever painted. So I guess I've always been doing it. I can remember I don't have it, but I do remember the first drawing I ever did in kindergarten,
Mm.
because I've always looked at my stuff and thought, man, I like that. Like, whereas a lot of people, they look at their stuff and they think, I don't like it because it's not this or it's not that. I'm
Right.
not saying I don't struggle with that.
Yeah,
But for the most part, like, I look at the things I've done and I'm just so pleased,
that's
you know?
awesome.
So I guess
Yeah.
it makes it easy to be an artist.
Right, right, right. What kind of stories were you writing when you were a kid?
My mom still has them. One of them, they had drama in them. One of them was called Best Friends, and I feel like it kind of copied this story from when we were in elementary school. So it wasn't very original, but it was fully done. And do you ever remember a story about a girl who said she had 100 dresses and everybody would be mean to her? And I just remember it on a projection, but it turned out that the 100 dresses were her drawings.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, I think
That's
that
cool.
because she was really poor or something, they would be
Yeah.
mean to her because she was poor. They knew she didn't have it, but she had drawn them all. And I don't
Mm.
know, what that book was called, but I think that this best friend's story that I wrote was something similar. There was a secret about a girl, and you find out the secret at the end. And I think I took that, and that's what I made. And I was about 8 or 9 when I wrote that story.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
words have always been like, people talk, and I would just see words in my head forming as they were speaking their words, but I would see print, you know?
Oh, really? Not
Yeah.
images, but
So
words.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's a podcast that I really like called The Myths That Make Us. And like the host basically just asks the guests like the first story or the first movie that they gravitated toward and that they reread or rewatched a lot. And then kind of they try to unpack like how that permanently changed them, and kind of set up
Yeah.
like this worldview for them and stuff. So maybe I'm wondering if the 100 Dresses story like set up some kind of personal mythology for you.
Maybe. I'd have to think about that, because I can hardly remember it. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
that doesn't mean a thing, you
Right,
know?
right, right. It still could subconsciously be, shaping you somehow.
Yeah. One thing that they talked about over in Arizona is how we have these things. And when you're little, you can remember all these things, like when you're mimicking people and you're doing stuff and you start adopting behavior. But by the time you get our age, your shell is hardened and you can't remember where you got something, and you don't know why you're doing something anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it
Mm-hmm.
takes a while to peel that back, but it is possible. So,
Yeah, 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 yeah. To make the unconscious conscious somehow.
yeah.
Um, how long were you there at that center?
I lived over there for, let's see, probably less than a year, maybe 9 months.
Mm,
Yeah, I was sober 6 months, and then I left and I got a boyfriend, not really. And that's how I got pregnant with Rosie. And so I had been sober for 6 months and I'd never gotten pregnant before, obviously. Not obviously, but for
mm-hmm,
me, yes.
mm-hmm,
Um, and that's when I came back home. So
mm-hmm.
I guess probably less than a year, maybe 8 or 9 months.
Did you feel
So
like you got a lot out of that experience being there?
yeah, got a whole life changer.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But I did feel like it was really tough. And
Mm-hmm,
I there's a lot of issues. There was a lot of issues, and it was, and things that they tell you or things that you learn take a long time to digest. Like one of the things that I struggle with is called, people call it a lot of different things. But the way I learned it at first was called love addiction. And that's where you struggle in relationships, and you're either love them or hate them, but you're never right. So that has taken me a long time, even though I knew like the symptoms, I knew everything about it, I'd gotten my education on it. It's still taken me a long time to really truly the gravity of living with an addiction that is not something you can stay away from, and not something that you can be, like that, but it is real. So
mm-hmm.
it takes years to digest that stuff. So yes, I guess there's never a short answer for me, but I learned a lot. I could have just said that. I
No,
definitely
no,
learned a
no,
lot.
no. I like long answers. It's good. Like I would prefer that than a short
Okay.
answer. Um, yeah, that's interesting. Well, when you were talking about art, and so you wrote stories when you were young, you wrote in a journal when you were young. Do you still write in a journal a lot?
No, I
Uh, I took
mhm.
it. It's a practice that I adopted in the last like 4 years, and it's completely changed my life.
How do you like it?
I think I mean, it's just good for my mental health, I would say. And it allows me to, like, I feel like I have a really active mind, but unless I kind of work through the stuff that's going on in my mind on paper, then like putting on, putting it on paper kind of organizes it and like clarifies things and allows me to like have a more kind of organized thoughts instead of like kind of amorphous chaos, you know?
Yeah.
And I've also like I dedicate different notebooks to different topics and stuff. So that's another way of kind of like organizing
Oh,
things.
that's cool.
Yeah. So I mean, I have like a catch-all journal called the Quantum Notebook that I call the Quantum Notebook. And I've done 20 of those since 2019.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. And that's 20 of just one type. Like I have like a history notebooks, I have religion notebooks, science, like woo-woo stuff, you know? It's
Yeah,
really fun.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I stopped writing when I had my daughter. Things got
Mm,
really, they got really crazy. I had a little journal I was going to keep for her. Somewhere in that time, it became very difficult for me to speak words.
mm,
Um, but when I started writing, that was a form of journaling. I
mm-hmm.
mean, not writing, I'm sorry, making music. That was a
Yeah.
form of journaling because I haven't stopped writing. I just changed the way I do it. And
Mm-hmm.
when I was journaling, I had a couple of mishaps. Like someone read my diary
Mm,
one time, and that was painful. It was about them, and
mm,
they shouldn't have done that, but it kind of scarred me as far as what your words can do to people. So
dang.
that was a hard lesson, but I also kind of shied away from writing. And then sometimes I wasn't solution based when I'm writing, which you don't have to be,
Yeah.
but being someone who struggles with mental health, I often would find myself shame spiraling. That's another
Mm,
term I learned out there.
mm-hmm.
And I still do that today. And sometimes it's worse than others, but I can recognize it. And I knew that writing, I guess I saw writing as helping me along in a shame spiral. And so I didn't want to keep doing that. But um, I sometimes write off and on,
So
but I
you're
don't
saying that,
necessarily journal about my day.
right, right, right. Yeah, I don't always either. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But are you saying that sometimes journaling would like perpetuate the shame spiral? Okay,
Yeah, make
I
it
got you.
worse because I'd start writing and it takes longer to write them than it does to think the thought. So like as you're writing it, you think of more and more things. Sometimes you might think of more and more good things that it's like, man, I wish I had like a computer so I could write faster. But sometimes you think of more and more bad things
Right.
and it's hard to put the brakes on it. So it's just control for me. I have a lifelong, I have to learn balance, control, and I guess control of my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I have to gain control of those in order to be successful at anything.
Right, right, right. And so music was kind of the latest artistic expression that you started practicing, right? Or did you like,
Yes,
yeah. And that's, I mean, you said you've been painting too, and you like kind of like to go back and forth a little bit or diversify your artistic practice or whatever.
yeah,
So I guess, yeah, a question around that would be, you know, especially in relationship to what you said about like your empath nature and finding ways to channel that in healthy ways rather than just taking on other people's emotions as your own in like a destructive way. So do you feel like painting and music allow you to channel that?
for sure. Even when my music is miserable, it is definitely, I feel better after I wrote it, So it's like it can be the worst thing anyone's ever heard. Like, wow, somebody come help this girl. But it really helps me because I
Mm,
got something out. It's emotional cutting, I guess, if you will. It's like you get it
purging.
out and it's done. Yeah. And so it makes me feel better. I have a constant need to create and produce. And I wish I could do that for a living because I would be, that would be there. You're never going to get me not doing it.
Right.
And the times, yeah, and the times that I haven't been doing it, I definitely, those are the worst times, not necessarily, you can believe no matter how much it might seem like it sucks. If I'm over there making some music or I'm painting, it is not as bad as it could be.
Yep.
The
Yep. Yep.
silence is as bad as it could be. So
Mm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a restless itch toward creating as well. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like, if I'm not in a productive period, there's like an underlying, dissatisfaction or something that, and
Yeah.
then once I get into the pattern of creating again, it'll become clear to me like, oh my God, that's what was missing. I wasn't creating stuff. And when I'm creating stuff, everything's at least a little bit better, you know?
Yeah.
Would you say that your painting or your music like allows you to kind of have that catharsis more, or is it equal?
They're equal, but they can be equally as frustrating if you're becoming too much like intent on the end. Sometimes when I have a song, I want to finish it. I want it to be ready. And I experienced that last weekend. I wanted it to be ready and it wasn't. And I was not that fun to be around,
Mm,
because it's like, this is bothering me. So same with this. I actually put this one here. I wanted not something I'm proud of. I was putting something I'm frustrated with,
oh, really?
because I'm frustrated with this painting, because my painting skills, unfortunately, if you don't paint as often as you should, you kind of forget some stuff. So I'm like trying to, yeah, trying to relearn some stuff. And I want her to be good because she's for one of my friends. And
Oh.
so it can sometimes make you frustrated, but the second it starts going right, it's like, woo, yeah, I feel
Yeah,
better. I have a good day. And it's like a
yeah,
really a high. So
yeah, yeah. No, that painting looks beautiful. Is it a mermaid on the
thanks.
toilet?
Yeah. So I'm gonna have
So
like a
cool.
little golden puddle right there. And she's basically the mermaid of the toilet. I don't know. And the roses I think are pretty obvious, but
Hmm.
it smells like roses. But
Did your
yeah,
friend
she's
tell
gonna be
you a
good.
concept, or it was something that you came up with?
It's something I came up with, and I was originally gonna put it in the bathroom at the office where we work. But now I told her recently, I said, when I finish this, it's yours to keep forever. And so she's like, okay, I have a place in my bathroom for it. Because it was just me and her that like it. I mean, I think where I work, the people think we're kind of weird. So, you know,
Yeah.
my work and my family's business, but I'm kind of transitioning out because I would like to pursue other things. It's I don't know what I'm going to do. That's the scariest part about it. Is it's like I'm leaving safety and comfort, but it's because I need to. I
Hmm.
need to find, I know that I'm meant for more things. You talk about spirituality, and I thought about that stuff a lot today, and I know we're going to get to that, but I know that I have to be meant. There's things I'm meant for, and I know I need to do them. I don't know how I'm going to get there, and I know that I obviously need to make money, but I just have to get there. So at some point your career, if it's not the career that is what you should be doing, it starts to take over, and most people come to a fork in the road. You have to make a choice. Are you going to go towards your career? Or are you going to do your hobbies? And I've made that choice. I'm going to do my hobbies. I
Hmm.
just don't know how. So,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, I know you mentioned your daughter a few times, and before I ask you some other specific questions about spirituality, I guess I'm just curious, like, what are what are some of the most significant lessons? I know this might sound corny, but I mean it's true, right? Like, what are the most significant lessons you've had from having a relationship with your daughter?
well, my sister pointed out to me a few months ago that I have one successful relationship, and that is her.
Oh.
Um, yeah. And so one of the lessons lately that I've learned as I explore myself and I see her, she's 8.5. Um, some stuff that she's doing right now, because I told you about the relationship struggle thing. Well, some stuff that she's doing right now reminds me of me when I was in college. And I'm like, why was I acting like an 8-year-old in college?
Mm,
Like she'll do things like, don't leave me. And I just, every time I say, I'm not leaving you. Walking to the bathroom is not leaving you. So for me, the lessons I've learned from Rosie so far is that, well, I'll do the cliche one because it's so true. They're going to do everything you do. I
Mm,
mean, I, a couple weekends ago, heard her talking to her friend, bossing her around,
mm,
and I'm like, she sounds like me talking to
mm,
her, but I have to boss her around. That's the thing,
mm-hmm.
it's like, I have to tell you some stuff to do. Like, I do have to
Yeah.
tell you when you're doing something wrong. If you're, as a parent, it's, I do things a lot different than what my parents did. And one of the things I don't do is I never, ever touch my child in anger.
Mm,
That's just a decision I made. I've had domestic violence situations in my life, and it sets off like a trigger inside of you. And so I knew very early on that that wasn't for me. Luckily, I have a child that I say luckily because I say that to people who, when people spank, they're like, well, your daughter's really good. So I always say that as like an out for people. But I talk through things with her. Like, we always talk it through. It's exhausting, Matt. It really is. I mean, it's
yeah.
like, but it's necessary because I don't have to tell her to do, not to do something twice, because by the time we're done talking about it, she understands the reason,
Mm,
and her reasoning skills are incredible. And I think it's because of the journey that we're on together, where we talk through things, even if we don't really want to sometimes. Maybe sometimes I don't want to.
yeah.
Um,
Wow. That's powerful.
yeah. Physical
S-
touch is a lesson I've learned, because sometimes and she's doing what I've taught her, but it's so funny to see your own lessons mirrored back at you.
Mm-hmm.
She'll be like, Mommy, do you need a hug right now? And I do. I get really touchy, and I don't want to be touched then ever again. Kind of like if you don't have a bath for a few days, you don't want to shower. Same with
Yeah.
hugs. It's like, I don't ever want anyone to touch me. But then it's
Yeah.
amazing how you have that hug and you actually do feel better. you
Yeah.
know I'm not saying I want to like hug the whole world, but
Right.
I learned that, and now that I taught her that lesson, she gives it back to me.
That's so sweet. Yeah, the
So
feedback
yeah,
loop. That's amazing. Do you
yeah,
feel like she's got a creative streak in her as well?
for sure. She, I think she has a really good voice, and she is really creative. The thing that intrigues me the most is that she's really good at math,
Mm,
like really good. But I do think that so I feel like she could be someone who's like a nuclear explosion of talent, because she has that math sense. Yeah. So I'm like, ooh, that's scary, because she's going to be able to, it's not scary, but it's
right.
like she's going to be able to do, big things
Right.
because she really enjoys the math side of stuff. So
Yeah. Imaginative and technical at the same time.
yeah.
Yeah. Nice. That's cool. She seems like a really cute, awesome child from the pictures that
Yeah.
I've seen. So I'm
Yeah.
happy
No
for both of
Photoshop
you.
there. She's super
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, for sure. Well, I know that the words spiritual and spirituality are really kind of like vague and ambiguous and stuff, and but I also just I think it's fun to talk about. So, and maybe it's not something, I don't know. I guess my first question about that is like, is spirituality even something that you explicitly think about much in your life?
Yes, I do,
Mm, okay.
all the time.
Okay. S- What would you say is kind of like your own personal definition of what spirituality means for you?
Mm, I don't know. I might have to talk through that.
Hmm.
I don't, I,
I know you
I've,
mentioned earlier about the trusting. Maybe part of it for you is like trusting kind of um, the things that actually do feed your soul, so to speak.
yeah, I believe in balance, and I believe in listening. Like, when you're starting to feel bad about something, or like maybe, dare I say it, when you're creating too much, and you start to feel like you're neglecting things, then maybe it's time to stop and pay attention to those things. I believe in listening. Um, I call out for help when I need it. One of my friends from Valdosta during college, he said, this is a stretch, but it was powerful to me. He said that the only thing that you should ever pray for, the only thing you should ever say in your prayers is help me.
Mm,
And I was like, that's a really good point, because
mm,
you can't ask for things specific, you know, but you ask for help when you need it, and be thankful, I think, is really important. Being thankful, and I don't want to say not forgetting, but just because I don't really see the creator as somebody who applies guilt to you. He's the or she, the creator is the person who takes it away. Okay.
So just to be transparent to the people who are watching or listening, we had some technical difficulties, and that's my fault, or my device's fault. I definitely didn't intentionally try to make that happen. But yeah, when we left off, we were talking about spirituality, and you were saying that part of that for you is that you really believe in the power of listening, you believe in the power of gratitude, and you also mentioned how asking for help is a big part of it.
Yeah. And then one thing I said after you got disconnected is, I just went ahead and said it in case I didn't get another chance, is that I just don't really see the creator as someone who issues guilt. So it's not about how much you talk or don't talk. I think that the creator is someone who takes the guilt away. And being someone who's very guilt oriented, I think a lot all the time about things that I do, and if things as simple as like killing a spider, I'm not saying I never do. I'm just saying that I think about all those things as like later. Just to me, it's very important to treat people as kindly as you can. So when I step out of line because I have trouble keeping my emotions in check, it really gets to me. It really haunts me that I may have treated someone or something in a way that was bad or made them feel bad, So I carry that around a lot. And so I think it makes me probably a better person, but it doesn't really matter because I always still think I'm not a good person.
Yeah.
But, I don't particularly like it if someone says that they don't think I'm a good person, but I try to be as good to people as I can.
Yeah. 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 I agree with that. That's the best that we can do. I mean, treat
Yeah.
others the way you want to be treated, and treat others as yourself, And the Buddhist version of that, when I lived in Berkeley, I went to a Buddhist service. I mean, I've been to several different Buddhist things at this point, but that was probably my first one back in 2014 maybe. And I went to this like Dharma talk, and the guy who gave the talk, he was talking about the golden rule, and he said that, I guess the way he worded it was that Confucius said, "Do not treat others the way you would not want to be treated." And Jesus said, "Treat others the way you would want to be treated." And Buddha said, "What you do to others, you're doing to yourself." And so it's fun to kind of reflect on the different versions of that.
Yeah. I kind of
Um,
like what you do to others, you're doing to yourself. That one could apply to me because I always feel like it comes back on you. Not
exactly.
necessarily like karma, I feel it later. Yeah.
Yeah.
For good or bad. So I really like the feeling that I get when I'm helping people or connecting with them. Conversely, I really, really hate the feeling of not feeling like I'm getting through or connected, or not being able to help, or God forbid hurting people. So
Yeah.
definitely I agree with that one.
Yeah. I mean, I can't put a hierarchy on it. It's not that I like that one the best per se, but that one kind of like resonates with my soul the most or something.
Yeah.
Because of what you said. I mean, I'm the same way. I mean, the word karma is just like so many loaded words like that. I feel like there's
Yeah.
kind of a common notion about, or a common connotation about what karma means. I think that the average person, at least in America, like usually thinks of karma specifically in terms of bad karma, where it's like the things you do come back to haunt you type of thing. But you know, traditionally in like the Vedic tradition, karma was just the law of cause and effect, in the sense that, you know, things have consequences and there's like feedback loops that are created based on just the relationships between things, you know. So I
Yeah.
think that in that way, karma is just like a fact, you know. It's just like um, it's the butterfly effect, right? I mean, like even seemingly small things have uh, inescapable consequence to them.
I
Um,
agree with that.
yeah, but I want to, you know, I really like what you were saying about listening and gratitude and asking for help. I just wanted to pause on that for a second because um, you said that somebody in college told you that, you know, basically like even if you only said one prayer, then you should, what was it, help me, right?
Yeah, his theory was that the only thing you ever need to say to your creator, which is what he always called him, is help.
Right. Help.
Please help me. Because why other, there's I guess many reasons you might talk to a creator, or as we humans, like something that's not there, like to like speak out to something beyond you. And a lot of times that reason is because nothing in this earth can help you. So you're looking for something outside of that. So that's
Right.
why it's so powerful. So how much do you really need to say? If you're looking for something outside of what you got right now, you might need help. But
Right.
I thought it was a good,
No,
you know,
I think that's really beautiful. And I just wanted to connect that to something. There's an old, I'm trying to remember when he lived. It was like the 1200s or the 1300s, if I remember correctly. This like Christian mystic, his name was Meister Eckhart, and he said, the only, if you only say one prayer, or basically like if there was only one prayer that you ever said, then it should be thank you. So that's the whole gratitude thing, you know, that you mentioned. And so it's cool to think about those two like prayers, you know, help me and thank you, like
yeah,
gratitude and the willingness to ask for help.
to be powerless.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like I'm asking for help because I can't help myself. I'm admitting powerlessness.
yeah. That's true. That's
It's
true.
very humbling to ask for help.
It is very humbling, and you know, I think I struggle to ask others for help, like in my own life. You know, that's a wound or an obstacle that I personally have. Like, I have a hard time asking for help. So, for example, you know, I've moved several times, but like, I usually do it all on my own.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And obviously, that's kind of foolish and just, you know, like, it's not practical at all. And but it's rooted in this weird hesitation or fear that I have to ask for help. But I've tried to work on that a little bit. I hope to continue to work on that.
Are you
um
afraid of being a burden?
Definitely afraid of
Or are
being a
you afraid
burden.
they'll say no?
No, I truthfully, I think it's the burden thing because yeah, I mean, even I have a good friend named Raymond here in LA, and we were talking the other night, and I was telling him how I have, like, if I have something difficult going on in my life, it's hard for me to want to fully put that onto somebody else because I feel like I don't want to burden them with my own issues.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, I was telling him that when somebody reaches out to me, like a good friend of mine, when they reach out to me to tell me something that they're going through, like, it never feels like a burden to me. It feels like I'm grateful that they would reach out to me about that.
I have that probably nearly the same thing. I so hard to pick up the phone and say that you need to talk. And even when I do, I usually feel shame about it anyways. But like whenever people talk to me, I love it because I always tell people, I'm like, I can't fix anyone's problems for them. And I don't think I'm a fixer, but I love walking with people while they're walking through their problem and then come out the other side.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, me too. Yeah, yeah. So I want to be able to, like, just always remember that it's like, yeah, I don't perceive it as a burden when somebody close to me wants to share something difficult that they're going through, and so I should treat myself with the same compassion and not just assume that somebody close to me is going to think it's a burden, because probably they would feel happy that I would come to them about that, you know.
yeah.
um well, another thing I wanted to just mention here, because you said the word creator a few times, and that's fascinating to me. In the ways that you're framing it, it seems like it's been really healing to, for example, like, ask for some creator to help you when you don't have, when you, at least maybe when you don't feel like you have the resources in your environment or within you to help yourself, so you have to, like, address something that is, like, transcendent of this reality, you know. And
Hmm.
that makes sense. I think maybe that's one of the most, like, maybe that's why it's so common and natural for us to seek out something bigger like that, you know. um
Yeah.
but I'm wondering, because for me, I've thought a lot about this, like, theological type of stuff, and I personally don't um see, like, the divine as something that is necessarily some separate creator personally. um so I'm wondering, like, do you see the divine or God as a separate creator, or something that is inseparable from creation, I guess?
I use that word for lack of a better term. I don't particularly like saying God, and I definitely don't like saying higher power. Um, Both of those things are unappealing to me. Creator is easier to say, but I honestly call it nothing. I just, if in me what I say in my brain is nothing. I don't like to speak it. I'm very private about it. Like I was more than willing to talk to you today, so I don't want you to think that, but like it's very private to me and it's
Okay.
not something that so like putting a name on it, I have to when we're talking or when you're talking to people.
Yeah.
There's nothing more awkward than trying to tell a child about it. So you have to name it something. When they
Right.
ask, you have to name it something.
Right.
So
Okay.
so I don't think there's a being. I don't know what it is that I did it out of desperation. I was going through time in 2020, but it's not like pandemic going through it like that. It was before all that stuff happened. And I just felt like I was gonna die, and I just felt it all around me and it doesn't really go away, but I just I had this strange so anyway, I just decided one day I was just going to go outside and sit outside and just start a conversation, and that's what I did. And so that has helped a lot. I mean, Or
Yeah.
again, you have to reach out and not be a burden, or
Yeah.
not think you're going to be a burden.
Yeah.
So that's always tough. But
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, something that you mentioned a few minutes ago about, I can't remember the way you worded it, but basically like this thing, God, creator, whatever we might want to call it. You were saying like basically can absorb our guilt or shame in a way that we can't maybe.
yeah, I hope not absorb. Golly, I hope they don't absorb it.
Yeah.
Or else it's like so big that it's like one of those super sponges and you put on a
Yeah.
drop of water. It's like, come on, that's all you got. Give me
Yeah.
something.
Right.
I don't know. I said, I think my exact words are like, they take it thing takes it away, but it doesn't really take it away, but maybe it is absorbing it, is
Yeah.
probably the sadder term, because it'll come back. It keeps coming back.
Mhm.
These things that we deal with that you have to throw off when you have to call someone and start talking, or you need to pray, or you need to create or whatever, it just keeps coming back. So
Yeah.
it's like maintenance, trying to keep the leaves out of your garage, I guess. You just have to keep doing it.
Yeah. Tending to the part of the garden that you can touch.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, there's a lot there. I guess as a last note on that topic, I think that I guess for me, I kind of see that like there's a part of ourselves that is, and I might be completely naive and blind and delusional about this, but it is something that's seen in a lot of ancient spiritual traditions, which is like there's a part of ourselves that is actually unwounded or unconditioned. Um, and most of us, the majority of what, like the majority of us, is conditioned, and but there's something that perhaps is like a shard, or I mean, even in the Christian tradition of like you're created in the image of God, right? There's like a part of us that can always transcend perhaps our own woundedness, and maybe that's just the, like, we are created from the same forces that create the whole entire cosmos. So it's like, I don't know, I guess it feels healing and practical for me to remember that even on like a meditation level, when you're meditating, um the awareness that we have, like everything arises within awareness. So you could perceive it as awareness itself is actually not being affected by the contents that are arising within it, if that makes sense.
No, can you tell me a different way?
So like if you are like becoming aware of, well, okay. So like if I was thinking about some memory that happened to me as a child that was like particularly emotionally charged, that I've remembered for all these years, that makes me feel either good or bad about myself, that memory arises in my consciousness as content in my consciousness, but my consciousness itself that is looking at that memory, the consciousness itself is more spacious, and it's just observing it instead of necessarily being
Part of it.
affected by it. Like the thing that gets affected by it, I think, is just the our ego or whatever. It's like the narrative that we have about ourselves. I think that the reason why those specific memories that either make us feel good or bad, they make us feel so much because they make us feel something related to our idea about ourselves, you know? But like the consciousness itself is beyond an idea you have about yourself. It's just the simple act of witnessing, if that makes sense.
It does.
So the act of witnessing, and again, you know, I mean, I think that this is a tough thing to talk about, and maybe it definitely doesn't always feel true to most people, but it seems like there is something healing when we can practice it a little bit, where we can like observe the contents of consciousness
I
instead
think
of being completely just like
consumed by it.
yeah, consumed by the contents of our own consciousness, which is really, it's hard not to be, you know.
That's how you get into a shame spiral.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But whether it's like a shame spiral or whether it's like
Or you're
trauma,
happy.
you
Yeah.
know, whether it's like just negative self-talk or whatever, like all these negative loops that we get into, I think one practice that can maybe help is exactly what I was saying, where it's like, oh well, the act of seeing it, like the seer, I guess, is not necessarily wounded by that thing, and then that can give you a little bit of like spaciousness and playfulness around it, and it doesn't have as much of a sting, or like the claws don't get into you as much or something.
And I think that's where I'm still working towards. There's lots of things that, whether they're good or bad to somebody else, I'm afraid to look at them, or I'm afraid to have anyone else look at them like you have something in your basement or something, and it's like,
Yeah.
nobody ever, it's only me that is so unsatisfied or detested, with myself. It's not really very many other people, if anyone. And
Mhm.
so, because probably many people wouldn't care, but the people that do care aren't really that, but I can't see that about them. Like, I'm sure I know what they think. I'm sure I know how they feel about me. And I haven't grown past that yet. So if I
Mhm.
live long enough, I might get to grow to be conscious without being affected. I hope.
Yeah, I mean, I say all that as I've gotten tastes of that, you know, but I definitely don't always feel that way. I usually feel wounded by my own mind, you know. It's
I
just
can do
that,
it if someone's holding my hand. And by holding my hand, I mean like emotionally holding my hand. I can do it. But because it's like a total safe space, they're like,
right.
it's all right, whatever it is, then I can.
Yeah,
But if I'm not sure, or I'm
yeah.
walking alone, that makes it a lot harder.
Well, it sounds like maybe it's fear, right? It's fear that holds us back usually, you know.
I got lots of fear.
Don't we all? Yeah, fear is a bastard.
Yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
looking at it though. I am looking at it. And I'm noticed, you talk about conscious. They did mention that out in Arizona too, among many other things, that they would say things like, I just want you to sit back and observe what you do today and just think, wow, that's interesting. And at the time I thought, there is no way. And there wasn't a way at the time. I cannot be in this without experience. It's like easy for you to say, lady, but of course they were just giving you things to think about. It's not like it was something that's going to happen right away. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you know, exactly. With stuff like that, it's like, whoops, you can have somebody like frame it in a certain way or plant a certain seed that might eventually make, you know, may eventually be something that you can practice, but it doesn't happen overnight, you know. But based
Yeah.
on what you just said, I think a lot, something that has always resonated with me is like becoming curious about those things. Like curiosity can be like a really cool catalyst where it's like, and you know, it's definitely usually difficult to feel that, but if we can be like curious about even the difficult things that shape us, you know, then
Yeah.
that's probably healthier than being afraid of those things. Um,
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, was it 2020 that you felt like you were in a pretty dark place and you felt just motivated to have some sort of dialogue with like the transcendent, we'll say. Um,
Yeah, nice. I like that.
can you say anything else about like what that was like?
Yeah, that um, it was awkward, and I continued to do it. So I would find a place by myself every morning and just do the things that I told you. I would sit and breathe for a minute. Um, I would say thank you. I would say, I would ask for certain things every day. I would ask for courage. I wouldn't say give me courage, but like be my courage, be my strength. Let me be the light in every people's lives today. I don't want to be the darkness. And I usually would get those things. I would also say that this is hard for me to do. I would say that I love you, and those things. So, and it really helped. And I continued to do it. I wouldn't say I do it every day, but I need to go back to doing it because I've approached dark times recently. And then I did reach out and ask for help, and that one was more emotional. So, um, but I would literally get on my knees, not because I think that's what you should do, but because I wanted to show that I just wanted to make it like a space, not just like you're walking around, because you can be thinking about things like
Yeah.
if you try to walk around and you pray or whatever you want to do to your guy, then you will start doing other things and you may never finish it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what I was
Yeah.
telling my mom. I'm like, I have to have this moment because it's like I might not finish my thought. That's
Yeah.
kind of the type of person I am. So
Yeah.
then it never, yeah. Then if you can imagine, let's just pretend it is like some guy hanging up in the clouds and he's like, well, is that it? Is that I've been waiting on this girl all day to finish her prayer. She didn't say amen, you know.
Right. Right. Right.
So
Oh, that's really cool. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think that is the root of like rituals, and that's the root of like creating sacred spaces, you know? Like we kind of have to delineate something as separate from our ordinary happenings to be able to like have the proper intention and focus toward it, you know? And so I
and that
totally
is
feel
something
you.
I'm curious about. Is like why do we need this? We've been doing this for thousands of years. Why? You know?
Well, you know, in this day and age, like we're living in so much more of a multitasking, distracted world where multiple things are trying to hijack our attention and energy. And so it's actually even more difficult to create a sacred space, probably. So it's almost revolutionary to be able to just sit down and like have that type of encounter or experience, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think it's probably like even more necessary now to like have some sort of, even if it's just a personally created ritual that gets us into that mindset, because otherwise we're just addicted to our devices and addicted to our own distractions, you know.
Yeah.
um wow, well, let me see if I have anything else. I think I mean, you really, I guess this is the last question. So I'm really glad that you shared about the kind of um, the thing that happened in 2020 and the type of practice that has like brought into your life. Even if you don't do it every day, it's something that you can come back to, and it's something that you kind of yearn to like keep alive in your life. Um, have there been any other experiences that felt like you were engaging with or encountering the transcendent on some level?
Hmm. Not a specific moment. Um, but I thought about when you had sent me the message telling me that what we were going to talk about. I thought about that, and my thoughts on that are that there's so many things in my life that, like, if you change just one thing, this one thing might not have happened. And I go back to, the fact that I went out to Arizona broken, a broken person. And because of choices I'd made, mental illness, stuff like that. And if any of those things weren't so, if I weren't the person that I am, if things hadn't happened, I wouldn't have gone out there. I wouldn't have got pregnant, and I wouldn't have my daughter. I might have another daughter somewhere else, or a son, or none, no children, but I wouldn't have her. So can we really say that anything shouldn't be? Can we say that everything's not connected? Because who would think that, like, a terrible situation could end up with a beautiful child? Who would think that? It's like, you're going to end up, I mean, nobody thought I could do what I'm doing today at that time, because they, but everything is, I know that getting pregnant with her was a divine moment. And it's because I hadn't been sober a lot in my adult life, and I'd never been pregnant. So two things that have never happened happened.
Yeah.
And so I knew at that moment, this was it. This was where I was going. It wasn't the end, but I knew that I knew exactly what to do. So
Yeah. Yeah.
what
That's
about
amazing.
you? I
Well,
don't know how often you've had to say it on here, but I was just curious.
spiritual
Have you had
experience
any?
or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a lot, there's been a lot. Definitely like paradigm shift moments. Well, I mean, honestly, I have bizarre things happen to me all the time. I have like weird synchronicities. I have tons of deja vu. I have just things that do not seem to fully make sense in any sort of rational way. And I think I kind of always have, and that's part of the reason why I'm drawn to like spirituality and stuff. The mystery component of reality is something I'm really drawn to. And I mean, for example, like, I mean, this is the reason I bring it up is because it's like one of the most recent bizarre experiences that I had, which is like, okay, so back in July, I wrote a poem at this writing workshop, and I wrote it on like just a separate piece of paper because I forgot my notebook that day. So I had borrowed a piece of paper from somebody. I wrote this like draft of a poem during the workshop, and then I just had this piece of paper, and I really liked the poem for some reason. Like I was happy with it, and I had put that piece of paper on my kitchen table, and I was too lazy to transcribe it for a long time. But I would pick it up and I would read it every once in a while. But I never typed it up and added it to my document of poems. But yeah, I really liked it. It felt like special to me. But then several weeks went by and I didn't think about the poem and I didn't pick up the poem. And then there was one night a couple weeks ago where I was like working on my poetry manuscript that I've been working on for a couple years. And I was like, oh man, I haven't added that poem to this document. I really need to add that poem because I really like that poem. So I went to my kitchen table to look for the poem because that's where it had been since July. Like it was just like sitting on my kitchen table since July. And I looked for it and it wasn't there. And I was like, just trying to remember if I had moved the poem or whatever. So I'm just like looking at every corner of my apartment, all the drawers, every room, closets, whatever, just like desperately trying to find this poem. And I couldn't find it. I mean, I looked for it for probably over an hour and I couldn't find the poem. And then I just gave up. Like I just didn't think I was gonna find it. And I was like, damn it, this sucks. I guess I just lost
I
that
hate that.
poem. And that stuff happens and it's really difficult to like accept that. But I was just like, what am I gonna do? I'm not gonna just like, be in misery about losing this poem. But then the next morning I was taking my dog out for a walk in the morning, and it's so weird, dude. the fact that I had not thought about this poem or looked at the poem for like weeks, and it was just this one night that I was trying to find it after weeks of not even thinking about it and not finding it. And then the next morning, I walk down the hallway and I'm about to walk down the stairs that I go down every day to take my dog out and stuff. And for some reason, as I'm walking down the stairs, I look up at the stairway that's above my floor, which I've literally never even walked up because I don't know anybody up there in the higher floors of my apartment building. I've never walked up those stairs, but I look up the stairs and I see this piece of paper that is folded on one of the stairs. And I'm just like, honestly, every time I see like a piece of paper that's folded, even on the sidewalk or whatever, I always pick it up because I think it's going to be some weird thing, you know?
Oh, you get excited.
Yeah. So I look up there and I'm like, okay. So I walked up the stairs. I grabbed this piece of paper that's like completely folded, and then I unfold it, and it's my poem.
What?
And I have no clue what that means. That's the thing. Like, I always have really weird things happen to me, but I never want to be, especially in the last several years, like, I don't want to, I have no clue what that is, how that happens.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have any conclusions about it.
It's worrisome. It's like, should it not go into book? Is that why? It's like,
Yeah.
is it the answer to a question that I had lately? Like, why is it being presented to me now, but not then? That is so
Right.
weird.
Yeah. I mean, on the most boring explanation of it, it's just like, okay, maybe I had put that poem in my pocket sometime and it fell out either outside or in the building, and somebody for some reason set it on that stair, which is kind of bizarre, but possible. The timing was just very bizarre. The fact that I found it the morning after I desperately looked for it, that was really strange to me. But what you're kind of related to what you're saying,
Well,
like
now
a
that you
lot of
put it
times
like that, though,
that weird kind of stuff though, often like yeah, it often makes me question whether like um it sometimes it feels like it's trying to either get me to pay even more attention to that thing because I had to go through some struggle to like retrieve it or whatever, or it's like, oh shit, maybe I wasn't like supposed to. I don't know. I mean,
well, when you
yeah,
just retold me your story, when you
mhm,
just said, I found it after I had been desperately looking for it and
right,
couldn't find it, I
yeah,
heard, let go and it'll come to you. That's what I
yeah,
heard. I was like, oh, that's
yeah, yeah,
it.
yeah, 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 yeah.
If we want to
Totally.
get symbolic with it, I mean,
No, but that stuff happens to us all the time, right? Like when we're desperately trying to remember something and then we just like stop trying to remember it and then it just pops into our head, you know?
that's your transcendent saying, dude, stop trying so hard.
Yeah,
You got
exactly. You
it.
know?
You got
And
this. I
um
think it's great because you're paying attention. And I also just want to say how much more interesting your life probably is because you're in it. Like you're so imaginative. Like you're like, I always, if I see a piece of paper, that just tickled me so much when you said that. You're like, I just hope. And I'm like, because that's the dreamer in you,
oh
like
yeah.
you want to go, you want it to be like a love note or something weird
Yeah.
or like, somebody's
Do you
bill
pick
that
up
they
stuff like
can't pay.
that?
So they, huh?
Do you pick up stuff like that?
I don't really see stuff like that.
Okay.
But like, yeah, because I don't get to walk a lot, like
Mm-hmm.
around. I mean, we do, Rosie and I do walk. I guess, I don't know, maybe we have found some stuff, but I don't see that stuff a lot. It's
Yeah.
usually like litter.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, this was fun, Laura. I really appreciate you talking to me for this time, and
yeah.
it's fun to hear about, your life in the past 15 years.
Yeah.
And I I know that we had a bunch of like technical difficulties today. I'm gonna try to stitch it together in some smooth way. and the sun is shining on my shirt in a weird
I
way.
can see. Yeah. It looks like you're wearing an apron now.
Yeah, but I usually I would love to have a part two sometime. It's fun to have guests come back on my podcast and just pick up where we left off. So we should do that
Well,
sometime.
this has been extremely enjoyable. I would love to come back and talk.
Yeah. Well, keep me updated on your music and the new developments in your life, all your paintings, and keep doing the good work,
Yeah.
Okay. Talk soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.